Beto O'Rourke. Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke is an American politician who represented Texas's 16th congressional district in the United States House of Representatives from 2013 to 2019. O'Rourke is seeking the Democratic nomination for President of the United States in 2020. O'Rourke was born into a local political family in El Paso, Texas, and is a graduate of Woodbury Forest School and Columbia University. While studying at Columbia, O'Rourke began a brief music career as bass guitarist in the post-hardcore band EFOR. After his college graduation, he returned to El Paso and began a business career. In 2005, he was elected to the El Paso City Council, serving until 2011. O'Rourke was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 2012 after defeating 8-term incumbent Democrat Silvestre Reyes in the primary. After being re-elected to the House in 2014 and 2016, O'Rourke declined to seek re-election in 2018. Instead, he ran for United States Senate against incumbent Republican Ted Cruz, running a competitive campaign that drew national attention. Despite his narrow defeat, O'Rourke set a record for most votes ever cast for a Democrat in Texas history. On March 14, 2019, O'Rourke announced his campaign for President of the United States in the 2020 United States presidential election. Early life, childhood and teenage years. Robert Francis O'Rourke was born on September 26, 1972, at Hotel Dieu Hospital in El Paso, Texas, to Pat Francis O'Rourke and Melissa Martha O'Rourke, N.E. Williams. He is a fourth-generation Irish-American. He has two younger sisters, the younger one born intellectually impaired. In his infancy, his family gave him the nickname Beto, a common Spanish-Portuguese nickname for first names ending in Berto, initially to distinguish him from his namesake grandfather. His mother owned a high-end furniture store and is the stepdaughter of Fred Korth, Secretary of the Navy under President John F. Kennedy. His father served in public office in El Paso as county commissioner and county judge. Pat O'Rourke was an associate of Texas Governor Mark White and served as the state chairman of Jesse Jackson's 1984 and 1988 presidential campaigns before switching parties in the early 1990s and running several unsuccessful bids for office as a Republican. Jesse Jackson conducted a press conference on December 11, 1984, in the den of O'Rourke's boyhood home in Kern Place. As a teenager, O'Rourke was a member of the computer hacker group Cult of the Dead Cow, named after a shut-down Lubbock slaughterhouse. The group is notorious for releasing tools that allowed ordinary people to hack computers running Microsoft's Windows. O'Rourke insisted that the group include female members, making the rare group of that era with any female hackers. O'Rourke has admitted that he stole long-distance phone service during his teen years in order to use his dial-up modem. O'Rourke wrote numerous poems and other texts for Cult of the Dead Cow under Psychedelic Warlord, a name taken from a 1974 rock song by the band Hawkwind. One piece O'Rourke authored during this period referred to scene sluts who form relationships with members of bands. Another is written from the perspective of a narrator who confronts a feeling of boredom and aimlessness by going on a killing spree, including hitting children with a car. As an adult, during political campaigns, O'Rourke has expressed regret over his teenaged writings. Education. O'Rourke began his education at Escuela Montessori del Valle Preschool and continued to Rivera Elementary School and Mesita Elementary School. In 1988, after 2 years at El Paso High School, he enrolled in Woodbury Forest School, an all-male boarding school in Madison County, Virginia. Between graduating from high school and starting college in 1991, he was a summer congressional intern in the Capitol Hill office of U.S. Congressman Ron Coleman. O'Rourke attended Columbia University, where in his junior year he co-captained Columbia's heavyweight rowing crew. He graduated in 1995 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in English Literature. He is fluent in Spanish. Legal issues. On May 19, 1995, O'Rourke and his friends jumped over a fence at the University of Texas at El Paso physical plant, and were arrested by the UTEP police for burglary. He was held in jail overnight and posted bail the following day. He was initially charged with burglary, but prosecutors dropped the case against O'Rourke and his friends in February 1996 when UTEP declined to pursue the charges. O'Rourke was arrested for driving while intoxicated on September 27, 1998, at 3 a.m. on Interstate 10 in Anthony, Texas. The charges were dismissed in October 1999 after he completed a court-recommended DWI program. In response to criticism from a political opponent in 2005, O'Rourke said, "I've been open about it since the very beginning. I have owned up to it and I have taken responsibility for it." He apologized and said he was grateful for the second chance. Music career O'Rourke had a brief career in music during his college years. After being introduced to Bad Brains as a teen, O'Rourke became a fan of punk music. O'Rourke and two friends from El Paso, Mike Stevens and Arlo Clark, learned to play musical instruments. O'Rourke took up the bass. In 1991, while at Columbia University, the trio recruited drummer Cedric Bixler-Zavala, and together they formed the band FOSS. Bixler-Zavala recalled O'Rourke and Clark introducing him to a zine called Book Your Own Fucking Life, a primer on how to schedule your own gigs without an agent. During the summer, they toured the United States and Canada, garnering the support of Feist. The group released a self-titled demo and a 7-inch record, The El Paso Pussycats, on Western Breed Records in 1993. O'Rourke also played drums in the band Swedes, who released an album called Summer in 1995. Bandmates included Jake Borowski, Arlo Clark, Julie Napoleon, and Mike Stevens. O'Rourke and ex-members of FOSS later started two other bands, a rock group called Fragile Gang and a cover band called The Sheeps. Business career after graduation, O'Rourke worked as a live-in caretaker and art mover before working for an internet service provider run by his uncle. He later took a position at H.W. Wilson Company as a proofreader, and wrote short stories and songs in his free time. O'Rourke returned to El Paso in 1998. At first, he was working with computers as an inventory tracker at his mother's upscale furniture store and living in an apartment building owned by his father. O'Rourke said he wanted to address brain drain, or the exodus of youth caused by lack of opportunity. In 2000, he co-founded Stanton Street Technology Group, an internet services and software company. With O'Rourke himself unable to obtain a loan, his father took out a $20,000 loan on his behalf. The company's first client was O'Rourke's mother's furniture store. As of March 2017, O'Rourke's wife, Amy, operates the business. For a few years, the company also published an online newspaper, also called Stanton Street. The paper was a mix of arts and entertainment reviews, restaurant reviews and opinion columns that O'Rourke modeled on alternative periodicals like The Village Voice and New York Press. In a 1998 interview with the El Paso Times, O'Rourke stated that his web designs paid the bills, but his heart was in StantonStreet.com even though it lost money. The company made a co-marketing agreement with local TV station, KTSM-TV, allowing StantonStreet.com and the station's internet site to share content and TV ads. KTSM's then news director, Eric Pearson, was O'Rourke's brother-in-law. O'Rourke was involved with El Paso civic organizations and nonprofit groups, such as the Rotary Club, United Way, and Center Against Sexual and Family Violence. He was a member of the boards of the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Institute for Policy and Economic Development at UTEP. Political career during his childhood, O'Rourke accompanied his father Pat at campaign stops and other political events. While Pat was charismatic and outgoing, his son was more reserved. Pat would nudge Beto, suggesting he go say hello to this person or that person. I was an awkward and shy kid, so it was the last thing I wanted to do, but now I can look back and bless my experience in it. Interestingly, his father was involved politically in El Paso growing up, and Beto would go to events. But I never saw Beto engaged with that arena, his mother recalled. O'Rourke cites his work on his magazine rather than boyhood exposure to politics, as the reason behind his initial political ideas and ambitions. As an adult, O'Rourke volunteered for the campaigns of several politicians, including Yosh Rodriguez for his 2002 re-election as El Paso County Attorney and Elliot Shapley his 2002 and 2006 re-elections as Texas State Senator. O'Rourke was inspired by the successful 2001 mayoral run of Ray Caballero, whose platform promoted the idea that El Paso was great. When Caballero failed to get re-elected, O'Rourke considered running for office. El Paso City Council. In mid-2005, O'Rourke ran for the El Paso City Council on a platform of downtown development and border reform. O'Rourke defeated two-term incumbent city councilman Anthony Cobos, 57% to 43%. Byrd and Ortega were also elected. Along with O'Rourke, they came to be referred to as the Progressives. O'Rourke is one of the youngest representatives ever to have served on the city council. In 2007, he won re-election to a second term, defeating Trini Acevedo 70% to 30%. On June 14, 2005, at his first city council meeting, O'Rourke was chosen as mayor pro tem by unanimous vote. The mayor pro tem represents the city at meetings and ceremonial occasions when the mayor is unavailable, presides over city council in the mayor's absence, appoints council members to legislative review committees, and generally works in concert with the mayor in a leadership capacity. On June 20, 2006, he relinquished the position, saying, "I said I would take it on condition that someone else would it in a year. I hope it becomes a new tradition that every year, a new mayor pro tem is elected." He was a supporter of a redevelopment plan for a depressed area of El Paso's business district with a high vacancy rate, which was also supported by Mayor John Cook and fellow city councilwoman Susie Byrd. The initiative faced opposition from a small group of small businesses and Chicano activists who did not want the part of the El Segundo Barrio neighborhood to be, in their words, gentrified, as well as potential use of eminent domain for reluctant property owners. Eminent domain remained a moot issue since it was never adopted. Despite the redevelopment plan predated his start on city council and many city council members having supported it, including O'Rourke's predecessor Anthony Cobos, the opponents focused in on O'Rourke due to Mayor Cook requesting advice and investment from a successful local real estate developer who was also O'Rourke's father-in-law. O'Rourke responded with an on-foot campaign to residents of the neighborhood and was met with a support as well some cynicism. An activist initiated a recall campaign against O'Rourke, which O'Rourke won, and a few downtown property owners filed 2 ethics complaints against him determined to be unfounded and dismissed. O'Rourke and others contend the recall and ethics complaints were simply intimidation and misinformation of bad faith stalling tactics. Ultimately, the redevelopment plans were only partially realized because of the start of Great Recession in the United States. In January 2009, O'Rourke sponsored a resolution calling for comprehensive examination of the war on drugs and the repeal of ineffective marijuana laws. The resolution, unanimously supported by his colleagues on the El Paso City Council, was vetoed by Mayor John Cook. O'Rourke told reporters the reason he spoke up about the war on drugs was the thousands of people who had been killed in the nearby city of Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, Mexico. He said, "I hope it has all had its intended effect of starting the national discussion of the wisdom of the war on drugs, and probably more importantly, helping to bring about a better solution than the status quo, which has led to the terror and tragedy in Juárez." U.S. House of Representatives 2012. In 2012, O'Rourke filed for the Democratic primary against the 8-term Silvestre Reyes to represent Texas's 16th congressional district. The primary was seen as the real contest in the Democratic, Latino majority district. Byrd ran O'Rourke's field operation and Escobar was head of communication. O'Rourke won 50.5% of the vote, just a few hundred votes above the threshold required to avoid a runoff against Reyes. He was contrasted with Reyes in his support for LGBT rights and drug liberalization. His campaign was largely on foot, and he reportedly knocked on 16,000 doors. He defeated his Republican opponent, Barbara Carrasco, in the general election with 65% of the vote. Upon O'Rourke's election, the district was no longer represented in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, a 26-member group established in 1976, because he lacks Hispanic heritage. As the district was 80% Hispanic, with 77.6% of Hispanics being of voting age, some officials, including David Austin, the El Paso-based border representative for the U.S.-Mexico Border Counties Coalition, argued that he should be permitted to join. For his part, O'Rourke said he respected the caucus's bylaws. As a congressman, he held at least one town hall meeting every month. In March 2013, O'Rourke and Republican Steve Pearce of New Mexico introduced the Border Enforcement Accountability, Oversight, and Community Engagement Act, legislation proposed to establish an ombudsman within the Department of Homeland Security that would investigate allegations of violence and civil rights violations by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, create a commission that would overview the agency's policies and provide insight on how to spend its $18 billion annual budget, increase the training required for officers and agents, and establish protocols under which the CBP would be required to report deaths at the border or agents' use of force. He co-sponsored the Consolidated and Further Continuing Appropriations Act, which was enacted in 2014. Notably, Section 506 allowed the CBP to enter into public-private partnerships with local entities to help fund overtime pay to customs officers at ports of entry, which helped fund the personnel to lower wait times at the border. El Paso was one of 5 cities chosen to participate in the program. 2014 During his bid for re-election in the fall of 2014, O'Rourke donated at least $28,000 from his own campaign funds to fellow Democratic candidates for House seats. O'Rourke was re-elected in 2014 with 67% of the vote. In November 2014, O'Rourke opposed Obama's deferred action policy that used an executive action to bypass Congress in order to spare approximately 5 million undocumented immigrants from deportation, saying, "The motive is noble, but the means are really hard to stomach." O'Rourke was one of 6 members of Congress who took a 6-day trip to Israel that included meetings with Israeli and Palestinian peace negotiators, political leaders and residents. O'Rourke's previous decisions to vote against U.S. funding for Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system and not attend Israel's Prime Minister's address to Congress had been controversial. The bill was easily passed in the House, with a 395-8 vote. While saying he was not against funding the project, he was reluctant to support sending $225 million to Israel without any debate or discussion, and said that the U.S.'s policy of unequivocal support at times has been damaging to Israel. 2016 In June 2016, O'Rourke endorsed Hillary Clinton for president, being one of the last Democratic congressmen to support her during the primary. As a sitting member of Congress, O'Rourke was a superdelegate to the Democratic National Convention. In October 2015, O'Rourke announced his bid for a 3rd term in 2016. He won the Democratic primary and defeated his Green and Libertarian opponents in the general election. When Nancy Pelosi faced a leadership challenge from Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio, O'Rourke backed Ryan. O'Rourke said that he believed in term limits, and therefore that it was time for new leadership. He had given himself a term limit in the House, and promised not to serve any more than 12 years in the Senate if elected. In 2017, the congressman, along with Steve Pearce of New Mexico and Eric Swalwell of California, sponsored the American Families United Act, which promoted the idea that U.S. citizens have the right to sponsor their spouses for legal immigration. O'Rourke gave up his congressional seat to run for Senate in 2018. Former El Paso County Judge Veronica Escobar, also a Democrat, was elected to succeed him. Committee Assignments Caucus Membership's 2018 Senate campaign. As O'Rourke was considering entering the 2018 Texas Senate race, political experts considered him a long-shot candidate. Ben Terrace of The Washington Post said he was suffering from a bug causing mass delusions that the old rules of politics no longer apply. He asked, "Can a Democrat really win in this deeply red state against Cruz, who will be running one of the best-financed campaigns in the country? And can he do so on a positive message about Mexicans in an era when calling them rapists helped make a man president?" No Democrat had been elected to statewide office in Texas since 1994. On March 31, 2017, O'Rourke formally announced his candidacy for the United States Senate seat held by incumbent Republican Ted Cruz. In March 2018, O'Rourke became the Democratic Party nominee, winning 61.8% of the primary vote. O'Rourke campaigned in all of Texas's 254 counties. He said he planned to run a positive campaign, not focused on Donald Trump or Ted Cruz. O'Rourke's campaign received significant national attention for its ability to draw large crowds and extensive use of social media. He ran his campaign without professional pollsters or consultants, and relied on volunteers with no experience running a political campaign. His campaign employed the use of mass text messages. According to the 2018 third quarter report from the FEC, his campaign spent $7.3 million on digital advertising alone. His first ad was filmed on an iPhone. O'Rourke posted to social media daily, including Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and live-streamed his activities traveling the state, such as skateboarding in a Whataburger parking lot, washing clothes at a laundromat, and blockwalking in his constituents' neighborhoods. He encouraged supporters to post selfies they had taken with him to social media. Some of his videos went viral, including his position on NFL players taking a knee and police brutality against unarmed black men. Supporters said O'Rourke's promise of compassion, more than any specific policy position, drew their support. Funding O'Rourke pledged not to accept PAC contributions for his Senate campaign. He raised $2 million within the first 3 months, mostly from small donations. During the campaign, PolitiFact rated his claim of not taking PAC money as true. He received his first major organizational endorsement from End Citizens United in June 2017, which found that he had raised triple the funds of Cruz without accepting corporate special interest money. In the second quarter of 2018, he raised $10.4 million to Cruz's $4.6 million, with each candidate having raised $23 million by September 1. O'Rourke raised more than $38 million in the third quarter, 3 times Cruz's totals for the same period. It is the most raised in a U.S. Senate race in history. According to his campaign, the donations came from 802,836 individual contributions, mostly from Texas. When asked if he would share the funds with Democrats in other races, he declined, saying that he wanted to honor the commitment that those who've contributed to this campaign have made to me. Debates. The first of 3 scheduled debates between O'Rourke and Ted Cruz took place on September 21, 2018. The candidates disagreed on gun rights, immigration, marijuana, the take a knee controversy, and the confirmation of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. At the end of the debate, the moderator asked the candidates to say something nice about each other. O'Rourke praised Cruz's parenting. Cruz compared O'Rourke to Bernie Sanders, saying he admired willingness to stand up for socialist beliefs and high taxes. O'Rourke replied, "True to form." Analysts described Cruz as more experienced and aggressive, but said O'Rourke won over the crowd. Cruz declined to participate in the third town hall-style debate for CNN held on October 18, 2018, in McAllen, Texas. O'Rourke agreed to attend the town hall meeting alone. During the meeting, O'Rourke said he did not see himself running for president because he has young children. He said he regretted calling Ted Cruz Lion Ted, a nickname given by Donald Trump. He confirmed that he would vote to impeach and indict Trump. He defended his Spanish nickname against accusations of cultural appropriation. Endorsements. On October 19, the Houston Chronicle announced its endorsement of O'Rourke, saying the congressman's command of issues that matter to this state, his unaffected eloquence and his eagerness to reach out to all Texans make him one of the most impressive candidates this editorial board has encountered in many years. Despite the long odds he faces, a Beto victory would be good for Texas, not only because of his skills, both personal and political, but also because of the manifest inadequacies of the man he would replace. The Chronicle expressed criticism of Ted Cruz, who they endorsed when he ran for the Senate 6 years before, saying he has shown little interest in addressing the needs of his fellow Texans during his 6 years in office. On October 25, Dallas Morning News endorsed O'Rourke after commenting on the divisive climate in politics, saying, "O'Rourke is the stronger candidate." In conducting his campaign, he has displayed a demeanor that offers respect for each person and a humbleness that will allow him to open the door to working with those who hold political views different from his. On October 26, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, which serves the notably conservative Fort Worth and Tarrant County, endorsed O'Rourke, saying, "Only O'Rourke seems interested in making deals or finding middle ground. That is why the El Paso Democrat would make the best senator for Tarrant County's future, and the future of Texas." Singer and activist Willie Nelson announced his support for O'Rourke and held a rally for him on September 29 in Austin, Texas. In a statement, Nelson said, "My wife Annie and I have met and spoken with Beto and we share his concern for the direction things are headed. Beto embodies what is special about Texas, an energy and an integrity that is completely genuine. At the end of the rally, Nelson debuted his new election-inspired song, Vote 'Em Out. A few hours before the polls closed, Beyoncé posted a picture of herself on social media wearing a Beto for Senate baseball cap with the caption, "I'm feeling grateful for everyone before me who fought so hard to give us all the right to have a voice." Other celebrity endorsements included Khalid, Aaron Jones, Eva Longoria, LeBron James, Jim Carrey, Travis Scott, Ellen DeGeneres, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Kelly Rowland. Polls and news coverage. A September 18, 2018, a Quinnipiac poll based on phone interviews put Cruz 9 points ahead of O'Rourke among likely voters, but a September 19 Ipsos online poll done in conjunction with Reuters and the University of Virginia showed O'Rourke leading Cruz by 2 points. Going into the third debate on October 18, 2018, a CNN poll, conducted by SSRS, showed Cruz leading the campaign 52% to 45% among likely voters. The media made comparisons between O'Rourke's Senate campaign and Obama's 2008 campaign for president, drawing parallels between their charismatic speaking styles, optimistic tones, and the nationwide attention their campaigns generated. Peter Hamby of Vanity Fair compared the energy at O'Rourke's rallies to the energy at Barack Obama's rallies in 2007. Results on November 6, 2018, Cruz defeated O'Rourke, 50.9% to 48.3%. Despite his loss, O'Rourke took credit for the election of several down-ticket candidates of the Democratic Party, which some called the Beto effect. For example, Republicans lost control of the Texas Third Court of Appeals and Fifth Court of Appeals in the 2018 elections. Of 150 state house seats, 12 formerly Republican seats were taken by Democrats, as well as 2 of the state's 31 state Senate seats. O'Rourke received over 4 million votes, compared to Hillary Clinton, who received only 3.9 million votes in the 2016 presidential election in Texas, and David Alamil, the Democratic nominee in the 2014 Texas Senate race, who received only 1.6 million votes. He set a record for most votes ever cast for a Democrat in Texas history. 2020 presidential election. In late 2018, speculation began that O'Rourke might run in the United States presidential election in 2020. Prior to the midterm elections, the New Republic said O'Rourke's Senate campaign was the beginning of a bid for the presidency, despite calling it journalistic hedging, or a justification for the media extensively covering a candidate who was expected to lose his race. Democratic strategist Maria Cardona said he has name recognition, a widely successful fundraising operation, a young fresh face with a sprinkling of woke, a cool persona, a new perspective, he speaks Spanish and would be an exciting and upbeat candidate. The possibility of an O'Rourke candidacy made some Democratic Party donors hesitate to commit to other candidates. On March 13, El Paso TV station KTSM-TV reported that O'Rourke had decided to run for president in 2020. O'Rourke confirmed speculation the following day by announcing that he was entering the presidential race. According to Politico, during his presidential race, O'Rourke has been presenting his 2018 loss to Cruz as a prominent selling point. Political views. Political analysts classify O'Rourke as a progressive, liberal, neoliberal, or centrist. During his time in Congress, O'Rourke was a member of the New Democrat Coalition, a pro-business member organization. National Journal gave O'Rourke a composite ideology of 85% liberal and 15% conservative in 2013. Describing himself, O'Rourke has said that he does not know where he falls on the political spectrum. He has sponsored bipartisan bills as well as broken with his party on issues like trade. GovTrack placed O'Rourke near the ideological center of the Democratic Party. The American Civil Liberties Union gave him an 88% rating, while the United States Chamber of Commerce, a more conservative group, gave him a 47% rating. According to 538, which tracks congressional voting records, O'Rourke voted in line with Donald Trump 30.1% of the time during the 115th Congress. Bipartisanship. Allegheny College bestowed the 2018 Prize for Civility in Public Life to O'Rourke together with Will Hurd, a Texas Republican. In March 2017, facing snowstorm-induced flight cancellations, O'Rourke and Hurd, both stuck in San Antonio, needed to get back to Washington for a House vote. They rented a car and embarked on a 1,600 miles drive that they captured on Facebook Live. O'Rourke and Hurd have worked collaboratively on legislation since the road trip. Business O'Rourke supports stronger antitrust laws to break up monopolies which he believes stifle competition and innovation. He promotes industry and business regulations meant to promote competition, help the economy to grow, and protect consumers. He believes, we must connect those out of work with the high-value jobs being created right here in Texas by investing in the training, certification and apprenticeship programs that make it possible. He has received high scores from labor unions with lifetime and yearly position scores of 90 to 100% from the AFL-CIO and a 95% lifetime score from AFSCME. Crime. In an essay he wrote for Houston Chronicle, he repeated a common refrain of his campaign, that Harris County Jail is the largest provider of mental health services in our state, and quoted the statistic that the jail has more people receiving psychiatric treatment every day than the 9 state mental hospitals in Texas combined. He proposed that politicians work to eliminate private, for-profit prisons, end the war on drugs, stop using mandatory minimum sentencing for nonviolent drug offenses, end cash bail that disproportionately affects those unable to pay bail with longer jail sentences, and provide re-entry programs to reduce recidivism for nonviolent criminals. Drugs. O'Rourke favors the legalization of cannabis. In 2011, O'Rourke co-authored a book, Dealing Death and Drugs, The Big Business of Dope in the U.S. and Mexico, which in part argues for an end to the prohibition on marijuana to reduce drug-related violence and undermine the finances of the Mexican drug cartels. He has called for the arrest records of individuals sentenced for possession of small amounts of cannabis to be expunged. During the 2018 Senate campaign, O'Rourke's opponent, Ted Cruz, claimed that O'Rourke sought to legalize heroin. In 2009, when O'Rourke was an El Paso City Council member, he called for honest, open national debate on ending the prohibition on narcotics. Education. O'Rourke is in favor of increasing federal aid to public schools in low-income communities. He believes that teachers and local education officials should have more autonomy in setting classroom standards with a reduction of emphasis on arbitrary, high-stakes tests. Environment. Before he was elected to city council, he joined neighborhood and community efforts to stop the re-permitting of the local Asarco copper smelter, and once he was on the city council, he made several efforts to ensure that the copper smelter did not reopen. O'Rourke supports efforts to combat global warming. He has advocated putting a price on carbon emissions and wants to substantially increase the use of renewable energy. He has been a vocal critic of the Trump administration's elimination of greenhouse gas regulations and the shrinking of the budget for environmental projects. In 2012, O'Rourke stated, "I believe that in tackling climate change and the greatest environmental threat we have ever faced, we need to take unprecedented action in building a foundation for a clean energy economy. Harmful emissions that contribute to climate change also pollute our air and water. Climate change threatens our food supply, our security and the complex ecosystem that sustains humanity. I will work with other members of the House of Representatives, the Senate and our President in helping our country put together a plan that will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions to the point where they match levels that can be absorbed by Earth's ecosystems. Educating our fellow Americans about this threat to our quality of life is important to our success, and I will do all I can to make this issue a top priority in Congress." O'Rourke has introduced legislation to establish a national monument at Kastner Range, near El Paso, and successfully included a provision in the National Defense Authorization Act to protect the area, which includes a historic military training facility. O'Rourke holds a lifetime voting record of 95% and a 2017 score of 100% with the League of Conservation Voters' National Environmental Ranking. Foreign policy. O'Rourke criticized Israel's actions during the 2014 Israel-Gaza conflict and voted against funding Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system. O'Rourke denounced the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem as provocative. He supports a two-state solution and believes that the U.S. could best support a peaceful settlement by urging Israel to discontinue Israeli settlements in the West Bank and assist the Palestinian Authority to negotiate in good faith and recognize Israel's right to exist. O'Rourke criticized Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu following his comments about annexing the settlements in the occupied West Bank after the 2019 Israeli election, calling him a racist. In April 2019, he called the U.S.-Israel relationship one of the most important relationships that we have on the planet. O'Rourke criticized Saudi Arabia's human rights abuses and the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen. In 2016, O'Rourke voted against the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, which allows relatives of victims of the September 11 attacks to sue Saudi Arabia for its government's alleged role in the attacks. In October 2018, after President Trump indicated the U.S. would not sanction Saudi Arabia over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, O'Rourke stated, "Saudi Arabia must be held accountable. We must stop rewarding their bad behavior, whether it's what they've just done in the murder of a journalist or their export of those who are spreading a hateful ideology or their indiscriminately bombing civilians in Yemen." O'Rourke supported the Iran nuclear deal to prevent Iran from acquiring weapons of mass destruction. In August 2017, O'Rourke criticized Trump's hardline stance towards North Korea, saying that we must not allow this president to sleepwalk this country, or tweet this country, into war with North Korea. In March 2019, O'Rourke called for ending the U.S.-led Iraq War and war in Afghanistan. O'Rourke opposed the U.S. involvement in the Syrian civil war and providing arms to the rebel fighters in Syria. He also called the NATO-led military intervention in Libya a factor in the destabilization of the Middle East and the rise of ISIS. O'Rourke supported legislation to curtail NSA's broad and unwarranted surveillance of U.S. and foreign citizens. In July 2018, O'Rourke said that Trump's performance while attending the 2018 Russia-United States summit in Helsinki warranted impeachment. Addressing the Trump-Putin joint press conference of July 16, he said, "Standing on stage in another country with the leader of another country who wants to and has sought to undermine this country, and to side with him over the United States. If I were asked to vote on this, I would vote to impeach the president." On March 23, 2019, O'Rourke accused President Trump of collusion with Russia to undermine and influence U.S. elections. In March 2019, O'Rourke said regarding the China-United States trade war that President Trump had a legitimate cause and, "We want him to be successful in this, but as I was reminded by a fellow Iowan, when have we ever gone to war, including a trade war without allies?" In an interview with ABC, O'Rourke suggested that the United States address the migrant caravan by investing in stability in countries where the migrants originate, countries in the Northern Triangle of Central America. O'Rourke said that U.S. involvement in Central America has not been a very positive one over the last 60 years. You can go back to the coup that overthrew Jacobo Arbenz in 1954, fully backed by the Eisenhower administration and the Dulles brothers, who had an interest in the United Fruit Company, whose fight with the government really precipitated the crisis that led to the coup. Immigration. O'Rourke favors comprehensive immigration reform. As early as 2012, he asserted that his experience living on the border gave him a strong understanding of immigration's impact on our community, calling El Paso and Ellis Island to Latin America for more than 150 years, and spoke against militarizing the border. O'Rourke opposed Trump's decision to end deferred action for childhood arrivals, which granted temporary stay to some undocumented immigrants who were brought to the United States as minors. O'Rourke said it is a top priority to protect dreamers. In October 2016, he gave a TEDx talk, titled "The Border Makes America Great," about his views on immigration. In an interview in February 2019, O'Rourke indicated he would tear down the wall between El Paso and the southern U.S. border, since he feels that the fencing has forced migrants to the most inhospitable areas of the southern border, ensuring their suffering and death. He has criticized President Donald Trump's rhetoric on immigration, saying, "Constantly stoking anxiety and fear about Mexicans, immigrants and the border with Mexico." Unfortunately, this president takes another step into a dark world of fear, isolation and separation. In June 2018, O'Rourke led protests in Tornillo, Texas, against the Trump administration family separation policy, which involved the separation of children of immigrant families. The city is located just miles from the Rio Grande, the river that creates the border of the United States and Mexico in the state of Texas. The Trump administration had created a tent city in Tornillo, where separated children were being held without their parents. O'Rourke called this practice un-American and the responsibility of all Americans. O'Rourke stated that leading the march was a religious experience. I happen to have been raised Catholic, and what I take away from my religion is you do your best to love everyone, to be good to everyone. In April 2019, O'Rourke publicly compared rhetoric used by Trump to describe immigrants to language from Nazi Germany. Ted Cruz asserted in 2018 that O'Rourke wanted open borders and wants to take our guns. PolitiFact found that Cruz's claims were false, noting that O'Rourke had not called for opening the borders or for government agents to take guns from law-abiding residents. Guns. On the evening of June 22, 2016, O'Rourke participated in the sit-in in the House of Representatives that attempted to force a vote on gun control legislation. When the Republicans ordered C-SPAN to turn off its normal coverage of the chamber, O'Rourke and Representative Scott Peters transmitted images by cell phone to social media for C-SPAN to broadcast. He supports universal background checks for gun purchases. On March 7, 2018, O'Rourke told Alison Camerata of CNN, "We have a great tradition and culture of gun ownership and gun safety for hunting, for sport, for self-defense. I think that can allow Texas to take the lead on a really tough issue, which the country is waiting for leadership and action on." He has called for a complete ban on assault rifles. Social issues. O'Rourke voted against the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion and Abortion Insurance Full Disclosure Act of 2017, which would have permanently banned the use of federal funds for abortions, and reformed the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act to prohibit qualified health plans from including coverage for abortions. O'Rourke told the Dallas Voice that he called marriage equality a core civil rights issue during his House primary campaign. While on the El Paso City Council, O'Rourke led a successful fight to overturn the domestic partnership ban. He was a co-sponsor of the Domestic Partnership Benefits and Obligations Act of 2013, whilst previously having supported Medicare for All. O'Rourke quickly became the most important proponent of an alternative, called Medicare for America. This alternative would allow all citizens on an employment-based health insurance to keep that insurance if they wanted to, but it would move all uninsured, Medicaid-covered, and newborn citizens to Medicare immediately. He supports stabilization of the insurance markets to improve the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. He also supports the expansion of Medicaid and is a co-sponsor of the Medicare X Choice Act of 2017. O'Rourke has spoken out against racial inequality. He supports the football players who have taken part in the Take a Knee protests. Speaking in a video that went viral, O'Rourke said he believes there is nothing more American than to peacefully stand up, or take a knee, for your rights, anytime, anywhere or any place. He has also asserted that while he was given second chances after being arrested twice in his younger years, those chances are often denied to too many of our fellow Texans, particularly those who don't look like me or have access to the same opportunities that I did. In September 2018, Cruz posted to Twitter a video of O'Rourke in a Dallas church, largely attended by African Americans, speaking out against the killing of Botham Shem Jean, an unarmed black man in his own home, by an off-duty police officer. In the video, the crowd gave the speech a standing ovation, and the video served to bolster O'Rourke's standing nationally, going viral and receiving wide praise. Veterans. O'Rourke has held monthly Veterans Town Hall meetings since he was elected in 2013. After hearing about long wait times, especially regarding mental health, he carried out his own local survey of veterans, which showed wait times far exceeding what the VA was reporting. In an attempt to better meet veterans' needs, O'Rourke and others worked to establish a new program at the El Paso VA designed to care for military-related health issues within the hospital while using community clinics or medical facilities in the area for more standard medical needs. O'Rourke co-sponsored the bipartisan bill H.R. 1604, the Veterans Mental Health Care Access Act, with Republican Congressman Tom MacArthur, which expanded options for veterans seeking mental health care to non-VA facilities. O'Rourke serves on both the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and the House Armed Services Committee, which oversees military installations such as Fort Bliss, headquartered in El Paso. In September 2016, 3 bills that were attached as amendments to H.R. 5620 were approved unanimously with bipartisan support in the House. The first, the Vet Connect Act of 2016, would allow a veteran's entire medical record to be shared with a community provider, without explicit written consent, with a pilot of the program then being tried in El Paso. The Ask Veterans Act would have a non-government contractor conduct an annual survey on behalf of the Secretary of Veterans Affairs in order to determine veterans' experiences with hospital care and medical services at VA facilities, the results of which would be publicly accessible. O'Rourke developed this idea from feedback from veterans at town hall meetings. The Get Vets a Doc Now Act would allow the VA to provide conditional job offers to resident doctors 2 years before the completion of their programs, in an effort to recruit doctors to fill the shortage of 43,000 clinicians. Personal life. On July 3, 2001, O'Rourke's father, a longtime cycling enthusiast, died while riding his bicycle along the shoulder of Pete Domenici Highway just outside the city limits of El Paso across the New Mexico state line when he was struck from behind by a 1999 Pontiac Grand Am, throwing him 70 feet, causing severe head injuries. He was pronounced dead at the scene. O'Rourke delivered the eulogy during the funeral service at St. Patrick's Cathedral. O'Rourke married Amy Hoover Sanders, the daughter of Luann and Bill Sanders, at her parents' ranch in Lamy, New Mexico, near Santa Fe, on September 24, 2005. Bill Sanders is a real estate developer who previously dated O'Rourke's mother and introduced her to O'Rourke's father. The couple and their 3 children live in El Paso's Sunset Heights area in a Henry Trost-designed mission-style house where General Hugh Scott and Pancho Villa reportedly met in 1915. O'Rourke is a lifelong Roman Catholic. Works notes